All right, Dr. Young, I'm going to go ahead and welcome you. Give me 1 second. All right, welcome to the conversation, Dr. Young. So happy you're here. I will give it to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm going to share my screen and then we will get started. Okay, so I know there's like the nice fancy way to share it so you can't see all the white space, but I need it this way so that it's not taking up my entire screen. So hopefully you can see everything and it looks good to you. Today, we are going to be talking about what it means to build a practice. So, how do you make inclusion part of your everyday so that instead of it becoming a program at your organization or an initiative or something extra, right? We want inclusion to be part of our everyday. So, a little bit about me. I live at the intersectionality of being queer, non-binary, and multiply disabled. I am an accessibility strategist who believes that access is a whole brand and it's not just an itty-bitty checkbox. I lead enterprise accessibility training and culture programs that embed inclusion into product design and organizational change. And I believe wholeheartedly in empathetic education, human-centered systems, and the power of community. So, all of those lenses are the perspectives through which we're going to be approaching today's talk. So if you've seen me around LinkedIn, you know that I use the hashtag A11Y with Angela. So people have said to me, "Oh, is that your company?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a company." Oh, do you have an LLC? No, I don't have an LLC. And I have sat with that and thought about it before. However, it's never sat well with me to use it that way. Um, A11Y with Angela instead is meant to be a movement that is rooted in empathetic education and radical inclusion and real world impact. So for me, A11Y with Angela is where accessibility meets authenticity and humanity, and it's a space for unfiltered conversations, which we're going to be having today, practical tools, and powerful community building. And really, it's a call to action to be the change. So, with all of that being said, I am here today to support you, but I am not here today to give you a strategy deck. So, if you're coming to this talk and you're like, this is great, I want to learn some strategies, that's not what this talk is going to be about. So, you are going to be sorely disappointed if that is the case. Somebody in chat, oh, Greer just wrote, A11Y is a shorthand version of accessibility. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's go back to that. So A11Y is how we write accessibility in the shorthand because 11 is the number of letters that exist between the A and the Y in the word accessibility. And I love, using the shorthand. And when I was trying to think of a hashtag or trying to think of something that I could use in branding, it just kind of popped into my head. So that's what it became. But if you ever are on Slack and you've heard of the Ali Slack or Accessibility Slack or A11Y Slack, that's what they're talking about with all of those acronyms. So, okay, so like I said, I'm not here to give you a strategy deck. What we're going to do today is we're going to give you, instead of a strategy deck, we're going to give you a challenge. And the challenge is to situate yourself in what you're hearing today and to think about the ways you can be inclusive every day starting tomorrow. Or if you want to be really adventurous, let's start later this afternoon, right? Especially if you're on the Pacific Coast and you still have half your day left. We can be ambitious and we can start there with our inclusive practices. So I'm here because I believe that inclusion is a practice, not a program. Every one of us, no matter our title, can choose to lead with inclusion. And I've seen firsthand how small, consistent actions can shift organizational culture. So often we hear inclusion as a part of DEI, right? Or when we have lunch and learns at our organization that are DEI based or DI&B based, we're talking about them as a program. We're talking about programmatic and structural changes. And that's not what inclusion truly is. Inclusion is the way that you live your life. So you can be inclusive in your words, in your actions, in the way that you structure your meetings. You can be inclusive in the way that you structure your office or your office hours or the way things are done on your team at work. And that's what we mean about these small, consistent actions that can shift culture. So you've probably heard a lot of the myths of big change. When people feel like in order to make a change, it has to be some grand gesture, some huge movement. So you might have heard people say things about inclusion like, we'll start after we're trained on this. Or we're not going to look at inclusive practices at our organization or on our team until we have leadership buy-in. You might have also heard people say things like, hey, our inclusion roadmap isn't ready yet. All of those things might be necessary at your organization, but what I want you to take away from this particular point is that you don't need to make big changes. You don't need everybody under the sun at your organization to buy into something before you can start becoming more inclusive. Inclusion really is about those small steps that you can make. So, what is this session? Well, it's definitely not a workshop on inclusive hiring, and it's not a formal program deep dive, and it's definitely not a leadership strategy session. So, what we're going to be doing throughout this session is we're going to be pausing to discuss. This is a very interactive session. It's a call into your everyday habits, it's a mirror to reflect how we show up, and it's a space to imagine what we could do differently starting today. So, throughout this session, I really encourage you to start putting your thoughts into chat, to utilize the chat as a way to springboard into what we're going to talk about next. So you might notice over here on the left, I only have 17, 18 total slides. This is going to be a really short session if it's not interactive. And that's why this session was built to be interactive, because I am kind of going to guide the conversation that we're going to be having, but I really would like this to be a conversation. So you can choose to share by raising your hand or by putting something in chat. I prefer chat only because it helps us keep it organized. So please feel free to put things in chat as we're going. So thoughts you're having, questions you have, things you agree with, things you don't agree with, sticking points you might be feeling. Anytime something pops into your head and you're like, yeah, but what about XYZ? Please put that in chat so that we can talk through that. And that starts now. Feel free to start utilizing the chat now. What is inclusion? You've heard talks over these past 3 days about, and everything kind of centers inclusion, right? I like to have this 4-line mantra about inclusion that I share with my team, with my organization, across departments. Inclusion is made up of 4 things. It's made up of the choices that we make, the voices that we're centering, the habits that we're repeating, and the spaces that we create. And let's break that down. And while we're breaking that down, I would love to hear in chat, what are some choices you make? What are some voices?
I think we lost them. The drama does persist. Akila would love it. There they are. Okay. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, and I'm really sorry about that. It happened yesterday. I restarted my computer. I closed all of my other windows. I don't know what's going on. I am really sorry.
No, if Dr. Kade was here, she would say the drama persists. So we're all here for it.
Does. Oh, it's persisting. It's persisting. So let me go back to sharing my screen because I realize that you cannot see what I can see, and it's in my head. Okay, here we go. So the choices we make. I want you to start putting into chat what you're thinking about as I talk about these uh, different lines, these different 4 components of inclusion. I'm glad you rejected my apology. Thank you. So there are choices that we make as a person every day. And a lot of the choices that we make, 95% of them are completely unconscious. We're not doing it on purpose, right? So we need to think about how are we consciously choosing to be inclusive every day? Because there are probably ways that we're choosing to be non-inclusive every day when we don't mean to be doing that. So then we also think about the voices that we're censoring. Are we unconsciously silencing people in our lives? Totally not meaning to, but is it happening? And we need to think about that. And then are there habits that we are engaging in that demonstrate what's important to us and whose voices are important and what isn't important to us and whose voices are not important. And then are we creating an inclusive space or are we unconsciously demonstrating that certain people belong in our spaces and certain people do not belong in our spaces? So let's go to chat for the first comment. The first comment is, I would love ideas for how to let my employees know that they can ask for accommodations and help it be made easy to do so. So maybe our regular year-end reflections or informal can be a place to always bring it back up, even if it doesn't come up throughout the year. Yes, absolutely. So the first thing I would say on this is that um, model what it means to ask for accommodations. So, for example, you could be like, oh, I had a great conversation with HR about some accommodations I needed, and they were really supportive. And I hope you all know that if you need accommodations, feel free to come to me if you would like me to back you up when we go to HR together to ask for those accommodations. Or obviously, since accommodations are very private, please know that if you do go to HR, they're going to be supportive. Okay. Or on your team, you can say, hey, I went to HR to ask for these accommodations and I wasn't feeling the vibe. So here's what I think I'm going to do next time. So this way, you're letting people know that accommodations are number one, something that can be talked about freely with you, that you are a safe person for that. And number two, if they need support, there are ways they can go about getting that support and feeling like someone will back them up if they're afraid to go to HR on their own. Yes, informal one-on-ones are definitely the greatest place to bring, talk about accommodations, especially because it is supposed to be something that is private. So when I have one-on-ones with my team, if I sense that there might be something that they need, I might be like, hey, would it be helpful if I XYZ? That way they don't even need to ask for the accommodation. I'm already offering it up as something that might be helpful for them. And then all they have to do is be like, yeah, that'd be great. Or no, I don't really feel like I need that. So I also say to people, take the word accommodation out of your vocabulary. People hear accommodation and they're thinking medical needs, or they're thinking HR involvement, or they're thinking paperwork. Take that word out of the equation because then it becomes something that they can just talk about. Hey, I really need this. Hey, I'm feeling this way today. I'm really having a lot of chronic pain today. So I'm going to be taking breaks every couple of hours for 20 minutes to put my feet up so that I can alleviate that chronic pain. So definitely model it. That's exactly what you want to be doing. Next says from Kim, please talk about the biggest issue we accessibility consultants face when working with small and smaller companies. They are unaware of accessibility and that it is a legal requirement. Any suggestions? We talked about this with Dr. Cadet on day one of Rethinkability. Um, when you propose accommodations as a legal benefit or a legal requirement, that is fear-based. Anytime you start talking legalities, it's going to be fear-based. People are afraid of that because they hear something legal and they think they're going to be sued. Okay, so I don't come at accommodations from a legal perspective. I come at accommodations from a human perspective. Don't you want your workers to operate at their best? If you do, let's think about ways you can encourage XYZ to be happening. And then that way you're having that accommodation conversation, but you're not doing it from a place of fear where you're suggesting to organizations, especially startups, that don't have the capacity or the finances, the financial backing to be able to handle a huge lawsuit. So approach it from a human perspective. What do people need to be successful? successful. It's a lot calmer. It's a lot more org friendly because then you're aligning with them and trying to support them on this. You're not coming at it from that fear-based legal perspective. So that's absolutely my solution. And I thought Zoom was going to cut out again, but I don't think it did. So, if there's a small company, you're a business of one, you're a business of 2 to 5, you're a business of 5 to 10, you want solution. You want actionable solutions for how to support the people that you're working with, right? And that's when you can say accommodations are tailored into ADA requirements, for example. So you might say, hey, an accommodation that most people find beneficial is XYZ. So you can pull in the language from ADA or you can pull in the language from EAA, but you're offering it up as a support to those smaller organizations as a consultant and not as something they need to be afraid of that they could be called out on or sued. Someone just said, I think about the referrals I make. Hold on, I'm trying to get the chat window to expand on me and it's not letting me expand the chat window. Um, Jess or Greer, can you help me with what the comment from Jess at
Yeah,
3:45 that starts with, I think about the referrals I make?
I gotcha. I think
Thank
about
you.
the referrals I make to other consultants when opportunities come across my desk. I try to be really intentional about not always referring people who look like or have the same experiences as me.
So the best thing we can do here is use universal language. If you tell it to one person, tell it to everybody, right? So you want to make sure that as you're giving advice and as you're giving supports, they're the same supports that you offer everyone. This is what we call being disabled by society. Shout out to Jamie Shields on LinkedIn for coining that term. So what we think about is, sometimes we'll assume that someone needs something, or we'll assume that they fit a demographic that might need something, but really what that does is then unconsciously says other people might not need that. But what if everybody could be benefiting from what it is that you're offering? So ensure that your language is uniform and ensure that you're offering the same accommodations or the same support and conversations around accommodations from a human perspective, remember, as a way to support the organization, to everybody. Does that help, Jess?
I'm going to speak
I'd
on her
be
behalf and say yes.
Okay, great. I'd be looking at the comment again to make sure I hit all the points, but I can't see it because I can't
Mhm.
see my chat window for whatever reason.
Do you want
So
me to
Greer,
read
you
off
want
a
to?
couple other?
Yes, please.
All
That's what I
right.
was just about to
So
ask
we've
you.
got one that says it's learning to unlearn habits, being aware of these. Paul said they all worry about money and don't realize some accommodations are tax write-offs and whatnot.
And some accommodations are free. Let's call that
Hmm.
out, right? Some accommodations are behavior based and behaviors are free,
Hmm.
right? So that really segues nicely into the next slide, which is what gets in the way when we're thinking about inclusion. So let's pause on the chat for right now because I want to just address these points and then we can get back to chat. So we overthink it, right? We think that we need to do some huge, again, grand gesture to show people that we're inclusive. But don't overthink it. Just make a small step every day, a small change. We also could assume, again, unconsciously, that other people are responsible. Oh, that is a DEI concern, and I don't sit in DEI, I sit in Learning Talent and Development LTD, right? So we assume that someone else is responsible and that we don't need to act a certain way or change the way we look at inclusion because we're waiting for someone else to do it. We also might fear saying the wrong thing. Y'all, let me tell you, as someone who is deaf and multiply disabled, I have had, and queer, I have had anything you can think of said to me.
Just the drama today with them. I love it, keeping us on our toes. I have a feeling they'll be back in 10 seconds. There they are.
We're just going to keep doing this all day,
Do
apparently.
you? Yeah,
I don't
do
know
you?
what
You're
is
good.
going
You're
on.
good.
You know
All
what?
good. You're all good.
So, so we fear saying the wrong thing. And I'm sure if you're someone who is disabled, you've had people say all kinds of things to you. And some of them, people will realize how it comes out and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I can't believe it came out that way. And some people really don't know how it comes out, right? So I like to throw things back on people. Like if people will say to me, oh my gosh, you're deaf. Like, how do you watch TV? And I'll be like, I watch TV this way. How do you watch TV? And then they realize, that it was kind of an outlandish question that they asked, and then they'll kind of course correct. But if they don't, it's okay. Recognize that if people are saying something to you that could be interpreted as rude or as invasive, they see you as a safe space, and that's actually kind of a good thing. And now you can take a moment to educate empathetically and say, hey, you know what? I love that you asked me that. A different way, if you have that curiosity in the future, that you might want to phrase it is XYZ. Also, look, we are stretched thin, okay? We have 1,000 things on our plate, and sometimes changing our practices or behaviors can be seen as something else we have to worry about. Recognize that, okay? Hold that space in yourself, hold that space in your team. Hey, I know we're super busy, so let's try to make this one change. Okay, and it could be something as simple as, you know what, you use appropriate color contrast on your slides. You know what, hey, if we're making slides, we're going to use this branding guideline, and we're going to ensure that our text is black, our background is white, or our background is black and our text is white, and we're going to ensure that everyone can read our slides. It's a quick change of colors, right? It's a quick step. It's not something super cerebral. And then also, we default to what's familiar. Well, I've always done it this way and I'm fine. But are you really fine though? You know, is that trauma something you really want to repeat, right? Because think about it. We all understand the need for inclusion because of trauma we ourselves have experienced. So, yes, we default to what's familiar, but look, the world is kind of on fire right now. Do we want the world to keep being on fire, or do we want to be, a cool drink of water that's putting the fire out in our own corner of the world? So, Greer, I want to pause here before I go into your everyday power, and I want to hear what else is coming through in chat.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of good comments from earlier. So Mona said, we have quarterly digital accessibility awareness sessions with all new hires, and accommodation talks are often brought up then. So that's a great idea.
That's
Um,
fantastic. What a great way to do that. And to just, my biggest thing about accessibility is it's most successful when you embed it into your own workflows. And that is a prime example of how to do that.
yeah, I love that. We've got a request. Are you open to a request? A
Am
question.
I open to a request?
Yeah, are
Am
you
I
open
open
to
to
a
a
question?
question?
Is this the time for that right now?
Yes, please
Okay, great.
ask.
So please talk about the biggest issue we, as accessibility consultants, face when working with small and smaller companies. They are unaware of accessibility and that it is a legal requirement. Any suggestions?
I think I did address that one when I was talking
Okay.
about how to make something a human perspective instead of a legal perspective. Because here's the problem: if you address something from a legal perspective, people are afraid. They think they're getting sued. If you address it from a human perspective, this is just naturally the right thing to do because we want to help people, right? Then all of a sudden, it lowers that framework in their mind, and instead of seeing it as something they need to be afraid of, they see it as something, hey, yeah, I'm a helper, I'm a good person, I want to help people, right? So you want to come at people and go, of course you're a good person, you want to help your employees do this. Oh yes, of course I do, right? You want to make it really easy for people to say yes to inclusion, and the way we do that is through heart and humanity, not through worrying about, that's like basically putting that little seed in someone's mind. Oh, you should be afraid of a lawsuit. If you don't do this, you might get sued. That's not changing it from a way that is really going to stick and be intrinsically motivated. It's changing it from a fear-based perspective.
We've got another really great comment from Luke, who said, it's one thing to have an accommodations process with HR, but if it doesn't include ongoing support for the interactions between the employees and their managers and peers, it just shifts a lot of burden to the employee. I'm in higher ed and hear this from students all the time. Even after they work through the process with the Disability Services Office, it can be an ongoing struggle to get professors to make the changes when they need to be made. Student ends up bearing lots of extra burden all the time if there's not ongoing support for disability services.
Okay, I'm going to say something really prickly and spicy. It is not our job as disabled people to continually educate you. That's exhausting. If you want me to educate you, I'll send you my hourly consultant rate and I will sit there with you, you know, on the clock and educate you. No problem. But it is not a disabled person or a disabled student in this case job to educate you. It is your responsibility, your team's responsibility, your organization's responsibility to do the work. Now, again, how do you get people to do the work? You feed off the fact that everyone is inherently a good person. And of course, they want to help. And you come at it from that human perspective. Okay. Oh gosh, it's really bright in here. How do you, when you're showing a movie, how does anybody see anything? When you're showing the slide deck, how does anybody see anything? Oh, maybe what we need to do, well, we can't put shades in, right? That costs money. So maybe what we need to do is we need to make sure that our slide deck is black with white text, because that's a lot more visible in a really bright room. Or, oh my gosh, it's really dark in here. I bet people get tired when they're in here. Okay, so how are we ensuring that we're keeping our content engaging so that our students are having fun, right? So, when you come at things and accommodations from a human perspective, people automatically are like, well, of course I want to make that better, right? Um, the hardest thing I will say that I have tripped over with this is people with facial hair and needing to read lips. Obviously, I'm not going to come at someone and say, hey, I read lips. Can you shave your mustache? Like, you're looking a little caveman at the moment. Like, could you kind of take care of that? Obviously I can't say stuff like that. So what I do say instead is I'll say things like, hey, you know what? I would really appreciate if you would enunciate your words and face me and speak clearly while you're presenting so that I can understand you better. Right. So again, you're making it about human perspective. You just need this help from them. And more often than not, you'll have people that are more than willing to help because again, we're all good people, right? We want to be seen that way. We want to be seen as a good person. Of course, we don't want to be seen as someone who would deny somebody something, right? So I hope that answers your question, Paul, that if we can encourage our team to educate themselves and to kind of take on that onus of being the person who is willing to provide some education and support and take that away from your students, then that really does, lift the expectation off of them, and you're kind of owning that. Now, of course, it'd be nice if you weren't the only one doing that empathetic education, right? But this is where team buy-in is really important. And this kind of speaks really nicely to your everyday power. So who are you inviting into the room to help you support with inclusion? Whose voice are you amplifying in meetings, right? Find a way to amplify the voices of the people who are asking for this type of support. Do you find yourself interrupting some people more than others? This can lead to unconscious bias. It's really hard to look at ourselves in the mirror, but that's really important to do when you're doing this inclusion work. Do you explain concepts with inclusion in mind? So when you're thinking about ways to be more accommodating and you're thinking about ways to be more inclusive, are you explaining those concepts to your team with inclusion in mind? And then what accessibility choices are you modeling yourself? This goes back to that point about the one-on-ones, and accommodations. You can model what it's like to ask for an accommodation with your team. For example, on my team, we are perfectly okay with saying to one another, you know what, I am operating on one spoon today, and
Would it be funny if we all just left the room and then they came back and it was just them? I was trying to get everybody to leave the room and surprise you. You're muted now, even better.
am I unmuted now?
There you are.
Perfect. I can't see any controls. They're all invisible. I can see that there's a control box and there's nothing in it.
You're all good. I
Fantastic.
got you. I got you.
So So look, I've already made an accommodation, an accessibility accommodation, right? I saw that Zoom was cutting out. I stopped speaking. I paused my sentence because I knew it was coming, and now I'm ready. I remember exactly what it is that I wanted to say next. So this is a way to model accessibility, right? When you ask for something, you are modeling to your team and to people at your organization that you are human. And then what you do is you open the door for them to be human too. Greer, what else is going on in chat before I move on?
So, a few reflections. One from Dr. Aina. I hope I said your name right. I run into misconceptions about my hidden disability, just wrong information that they spew as fact. I try to gently and informatively correct them. Paul said, I've driven somewhere and people were shocked I got there, or at airports, to be given braille, I'm deaf, or given a wheelchair. People sometimes just don't understand.
I'm sorry, Paul. That made me laugh.
Paul's
It
got
has happened.
stories.
Oh, I bet. And as someone else who is deaf but speaks and lip reads, I'm sure we have some good stories we could share together. So um, let's go back to invisible disabilities for a second. When you have a disability that is not readily apparent, or even if you do have a disability that is readily apparent, there are people who are going to assume they know everything about your disability because of what they've read on Dr. Google or the internet, right? It is not your job to prove your disability. It is, I said this with Dr. Aquila on Wednesday, it is not your job to prove your pain, okay? They could think what they want. You got to let that go. They're going to think what they want. You got to let that go. Okay. What I tell people is don't tell others your plans, just show them the results. So someone looks at you and thinks that you have certain limitations because of your disability. That's okay. Let them think that. You're just going to show them all your incredible results as you're over there, you know, achieving your goals, smashing the glass ceiling, obliterating your KPIs for the quarter, right? So you're just showing them what you're capable of, and they're going to think what they're going to think, and that's not on you, that's on them. So give yourself a break, Dr. Ina. Don't feel the need to empathize. Don't feel the need to educate, because think about it this way: what are people going to hear even as you're educating them? I have had a lot of conversations with people that I now start with this statement: what is it going to take for me to change your mind? And if you know what, if you can't change their mind, if they answer with I don't know, or if they answer with probably nothing, then you know what? You've just alleviated yourself all the time and stress of having that conversation, because now you know there's nothing you can say, ain't nothing going to come out of your mouth that's going to change that person's mind. So, you do your best of showing them your results. Like Paul, you're showing them your results by arriving safely at wherever you're going, despite the fact that they think you can't do that. That's when, if they're like, how'd you get here? You're like, in my car, just like you did, right? So again, throw those crazy statements and those crazy questions back on them. Why? How'd you get here? What'd you do? Teleport? What you got? You got your TARDIS over there? Like what? Right? So, throw it back on them, and they're gonna hear how loopy or wonky that might sound. Anything else in chat before I move on to thinking about our day, Greer?
No, I think you're good to move on.
Awesome. So let's think about our day. What is one moment today where you chose inclusion? And you know what? I want you to celebrate that. And even if you didn't know that you were doing it, I want you to celebrate that you did it. Okay. Today my wife and I had to take one of our 2-year-old cats. We have two 2-year-old cats to the vet. She's got a blockage. We think she ate the fake Halloween tree. Fantastic. Said to my team, you know what? I'm really going to need to lower my capacity for today. So I'm going to prioritize XYZ, and this is what I'm going to work on. And if you need me, text me, because I'm probably not going to be at my device midday. So I chose inclusion. I chose to pivot, and I chose to be honest with what I knew I could accomplish today. And my team was super understanding. Number one, because most of us own cats. So we were all super understanding, right? Then they all wanted to see a picture of Peanut. So then I had to go send a picture of Peanut. What's one missed opportunity where I could have been more inclusive? Got really frustrated today. Reached out to somebody. They didn't answer me as quickly as I wanted an answer, and I got frustrated. And I recognized that. I was like, you know what? Why am I getting frustrated? Maybe they're in the bathroom for a really long time, or maybe they had to go take a walk, right? Maybe they had to go touch grass, because Lord knows with the world the way it is right now, we probably all outside touching grass, right? So then give yourself grace and be like, you know what? How can I try again tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'm going to ping someone, and while I'm waiting on a response from them, I'm going to work on something else. I'm not going to let other people's actions affect my progress, right? And what I'm accomplishing, or even my mood, right? Don't let people affect your mood. I mean, it's easier to said than done, right? But time box it. I am Greek, which means I am hugely, visibly, outwardly emotional. So I time box stuff. When something affects me, I give myself 5 minutes to like freak out about it. And then I go, okay, now we're going to move on. I don't tell myself I'm not going to react because that's not, there's a word I want. That's not a word, and it's totally failing me. But
Realistic?
thank you. That was the word I wanted. Oh my gosh. I had the R in my head and couldn't think of the rest of it. So I'm not going to tell myself, oh no, I'm not going to react to that because that's not realistic. There's going to be a reaction. It's going to be a big reaction. And I'm not going to tell myself, you know what, I won't think about this right now. I'll think about it later because, of course, I'm going to stew about it. Right. So I know what works for me. I give myself grace and then we move on. Right. Know better, do better. It really is that simple. So I would like to give you a thought to consider. Systems are people too. Okay. And you're like, what? Systems and people? Two separate things. No, people are systems and systems are people. Think about it. Every system in your organization is a system of the people doing the thing to keep the system going, right? So systems are people. So you are not powerless, you are a ripple, okay? One little change that you do is going to ripple to someone else. And even if you don't think it will, I promise you it will because people are going to see that you're making that change. When individuals act with intention, that's how those systems evolve, right? And then culture is what happens when no one is looking. And I put this as like, so if we're looking at the way these arrows are going, so we've got arrows going up for you're not powerless, you are a ripple, and we've got an arrow going up for when individuals act with intention, systems evolve, because those are things that move, and act outward. But then I've got an arrow going down for culture is what happens when no one is looking, and another arrow going down for systems feel immovable, but they are built by people because these are internal things. These are internal processes, right? Culture is what is happening when no one is looking because culture is the way people respond to things, right? I used to say culture is judgment. And I usually say that like tongue in cheek because if you know anything about different types of culture, there's layers of judgment in all different types of cultures, right? If you're Greek like me, there is a way that that culture exists, and Greek culture thrives and exists on judgment and a lot of blessing yourself and a lot of church. But anyway, so culture is what happens when no one is looking. It's the unconscious things that are at play in your organization. And then systems feel immovable, but they're built by people and people can change. Okay. For the most part in this process, if you're looking over at your narcissistic partner, wondering how you can change them, the answer is no, you cannot. But we're talking about the ways that you can change people, okay? And the ways that you can change people with inclusion are by modeling those inclusive practices that then other people will see and look to, even if it's unconscious. So I want you to choose your one practice right now in your head, right now. Think small. I can't think of anything. You're putting me on the spot. You're only giving me a second. That's because I want you to think really, really, really small. Okay. So for your one practice that you're going to start later today, ideally, or tomorrow, you're going to think small and you're going to think repeatable. What is something small that you can do over and over and over and over? And something small that I can do over and over and over and over is recognize that people will have their own response times when I ping them. And you know what? That's my one practice. And I came up with that in my head just now. Like I wasn't preparing for this. And when I gave that example, it just came into my head. So therefore, I went with it. So if I could choose my one practice right now, you can choose your one practice right now. So is anybody bold and brave willing to put the one small practice that they are going to enact beginning later today or tomorrow that is repeatable in chat? One state.
Okay, they're gone, so I'll facilitate this while they're gone. If anyone has anything to share, I could definitely talk about a couple that I've learned from these sessions. One would be I will never ever send anyone a message ever again that just says, "Hey." I will always provide context. I will always provide a reason for why I want to show up, or I'm asking them to talk with me. And so,
Thank
um,
you. Oh
yeah,
my
I think
gosh.
that's a huge one.
Can we please normalize not saying hi, can we talk?
hmm I, and
Please.
and I used to work in HR. And so when I used to do that to people, their stomachs would drop into their assholes almost immediately because why is HR saying this to me? Uh-oh, I am in trouble. And so that can ruin someone's whole day, that can dysregulate their system, that can throw them off for a week of time, especially if you're not meeting like right away and you're just saying, hey, can we meet later? So I think being really intentional with how you are reaching out to people, it's a really easy one.
That's a great one. Anything else in chat, Greer?
Yes, we have put subjects on meetings and emails.
Yes, please. Now, I will tell you, most of my meetings with my teams are called sync, but it's because my teammate and I, who I'm meeting with, have already talked about what that meeting will be, and it's on the calendar, and we know what it's going to be. So if that's the case, then fine. If that's not the case, yes, give it a subject. I'm going to go one step further. If you want to be super inclusive, give an agenda.
I was just going to say that.
Okay. Give
Yep.
an agenda. I cannot stand when I come to a meeting and I have no idea what it's going to be about and there is no agenda. I don't know if I need to prepare. I don't know what mindset I need to be in. I don't know if we're talking about, our pets or our kids or if we're talking about the latest audit that happened. So always put an agenda in a meeting. It's really super helpful, especially for neurodiverse people who like to have their day planned out in their head, like me. What
hmm
else is in chat?
I will say too, I started declining any meetings that didn't have an agenda, and guess what started showing
Ooh,
up a lot.
agendas.
So just a little behavior change.
Way to train your people. Way to train your people.
Right. God, it's up to us. All right. So we have Alyssa who said, I'm practicing writing image description summaries for my stories on my Instagram for slides with pre-made content that Instagram interprets as just an image. This takes extra time, but the more I practice it, the easier it's becoming.
Exactly. You will find, so I love writing alt text because I can spit it out in a couple of seconds. You will find the more you do something like that and the more you find the point of distilling down what it is that you're trying to describe, the easier it comes to you. Yes, absolutely. The more you practice that, it will get easier, I promise. And also, what I tell people about alt text, you don't need to describe the entire image. You need to describe the point that the image is trying to make. So, for example, right before this call, I posted something on LinkedIn. I said, hey, we're getting started right now for rethinkability for my session. Here's the link to join right now. Here's the Zoom link. Boom. And on the image description, I didn't say that I'm a human, a white human with curly purple side shaved hair, or that I'm wearing my favorite shirt, which is my dinosaur astronaut shirt. I didn't say that because that wasn't the point of the image. The point of the image was that Dr. Young was logged on, ready to go with their headphones on. That was the point of the image. So some people disagree with that, and some people really do think you need to give the full context of an image. I don't, because think about cognitive load. When you're glancing at an image, your eyes are unconsciously filtering out what it doesn't need from that image, and it's consciously filtering in what it does need. So if you think about it, you always want to match so that what you're doing for someone who might be disabled is what you would do for anybody. And when you think about it, we're both taking the same information from that image or that alt text. We're only taking what pertains to us. So if Greer was like, hey, do you notice anything different about my background? The first thing I'd be doing in the image is trying to find what's different. In Greer's alt text, she would put what's different because that's what she wanted people to notice. Does that make sense? So, if this was a test and Greer was like, what color is the ball in the stained glass dog's mouth? I wouldn't be looking at the candles and the stuff on the top of the shelf, right? I would be only looking at the dog. So that's why I tell people, please don't go overkill on your alt text. It's not a dissertation. You really don't need to, I promise you.
I love
What else?
that. And
Anything
I
else?
think I think a little caveat I'll throw into that too is if you're just starting, throw it into ChatGPT and ask it to help you write alt text. So that's a way to start building your muscle if you don't know where to start. Um,
Exactly.
Carissa said, I'm going to remind people around me that we are not powerless. Systems are made up of people and people can change.
Yay! I love that.
I think
Great
that's
takeaway.
awesome. Kai said, I will decline all meetings that don't start 5 minutes later than usual to give myself and others a brain break. And then qualified that by saying, not all meetings, but at least one-on-one meeting requests and team meetings.
I love that. I will tell you, my team is not always the greatest about giving buffers between meetings. And sometimes when we go over, then we're in a hurry to get to the next meeting or we're feeling really like stressed and rushed. So I think that's fantastic.
Amazing. Christopher said hashtag camel case. Hashtag
Yes,
hashtags. Yes. So very easy.
yes, yes. Camel case is very easy. If you're not familiar with camel case, it means that you capitalize the first letter of each word in your hashtag. So if you haven't seen the really funny ones where it looks like it's a sexually inappropriate word in the middle of a hashtag because people didn't use camel case, then you know what I'm referring to. So yeah, always use camel case in your hashtags.
Yep. Paul said, well, I'll share Jen real quick said, and camel case is not a sign of AI. So just a good little fun thing. Paul
Yes.
said, if you are running a training class or something, do not have training classes every day for 8 hours a day. Did that for 3 months in a row, classroom style with interpreters. It was too much. They asked me afterwards what they could change for the future. I was like, never do that ever again. It was an overload of information, and I can't look down and take notes or anything.
First of all, I'm uh, both not surprised and appalled that there are organizations that do that. So let's recognize that. Also, if we think about, what people can take in or what people are willing to do, if you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I would never sit in a training like that," then why are you going to make other people do it? So when I
Hmm.
do trainings, they're at minimum every other day, preferably twice a week, and for no more than 2 hours at a time.
Yep.
And honestly, I'm a huge proponent of micro learnings. If you can't learn it in 3 minutes, then find a way to break it down so that you can.
Yeah.
So,
You
yeah.
say 2 hours, I'll give you 90 minutes and have that be my max. So I think we
Oh, well,
can
there's a
both
whole bunch of breaks in there.
but
Whole
we can
bunch of
both,
breaks
yeah,
in
I think
there.
we can both agree that the
Yeah,
long adults don't learn like that. And so we have to appeal to how adults learn and be inclusive of them.
right. Now, I
Uh,
want to be mindful of time.
yeah.
So, since we have to be mindful of time because we only do have a few minutes left, I want to just share my screen and just go through. Oh, my screen doesn't even want to share. Oh, fantastic. That's awesome.
I can see if I
Okay.
have your presentation and I can share it if I have it.
Let's see. Yep, nope, Zoom does not want to click any buttons. That's awesome. Okay, so the TLDR of this is that inclusion isn't a program, it's a practice. You don't need permission to start being inclusive because, listen, are you ready? Are you listening?
Tell me that their camera just went out. There they
Are you
are.
listening? Are you ready? And then I disappear.
Yep.
So, slide 16, please. So, you don't need permission to start be inclusive because your habits are going to be the culture. That's what I wanted to say when I said, "Are you listening? Are you ready?" Your habits are the culture. Change is personal before it's systemic. You need to do the change within yourself first before you can start to change others. Okay. Next slide, please. If you remember one thing from this whole talk, please remember that small habits are what shape systems. Don't wait for a plan, be the practice. That's all I can say about that. And I would love to continue the conversation with you, preferably not over a Zoom that keeps glitching and kicking me out. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn. My full LinkedIn address is www.linkedin.com/in /Dr. -Angela-Young. You can also follow hashtag A11Y with Angela. And I would love to talk more with you about ways that we can take small steps to be inclusive every single day.
I said amazing. Dr. Young, one final request before you hop off of this call and we hop to break. Will you please share
Absolutely.
the link to your book in the chat so that anybody who is interested in learning more can check that out? But with that, anybody have any final thoughts, comments, anything before we break?
I might be able to share the link to my book in chat, although chat doesn't exactly like me at the moment.
If you can't, I will. So I can do that as soon as we hop off here.
Let me see if it will let me. Give me 1 second. So, co-authored a book. Actually, Kai Wong is on this call. Kai also was one of our co-authors. If you are a co-author on this book and I did not shout you out because I did not see that you were on the call, please shout yourself out in chat. I apologize for the really hideous link, but that link will take you to the Amazon link for our book. Now, if you are not a fan of Amazon, you can also find the book on bookshop.org, which supports local small bookshops, or on barnesandnoble.com, bn.com.
Amazing. We will also send that resource out once we follow up with the summit. So thank you so much, Dr. Ange. This was an amazing session. Really appreciate it.
I'm so glad you loved it. If you're curious about what the book is about, since I talked about the book without even telling you, it's called Inclusive Design for Accessibility. And it gives you lots of tips and tricks and practices for how to be inclusive in the way you design systems and components at work and in your life in general. It's a fabulous book, and it's on sale on Amazon right now, too. So you get it a little cheaper than everybody else.
Amazing. All right. Well, I know what we all will be doing during our 10-minute break, going and buying that book. So thank you so much again. We'll be back in a few minutes, everyone.